Max's low growl cut through the cheerful Easter parade music like a blade. Sarah Collins felt the tension ripple through her K9 partner's muscular frame as they patrolled the crowded Atlanta street corner. Families with children clutched colorful balloons, while vendors hawked cotton candy, but Max's amber eyes were locked on something else entirely. "What is it, boy?" Sarah followed his gaze to a figure in an elaborate Easter bunny costume weaving through the crowd. The soldier underneath was tall, broad-shouldered, his military bearing unmistakable even beneath the fluffy pink and white suit. Nothing seemed amiss, yet Max's hackles remained raised. The Belgian Malinois rarely reacted this way without cause. In their 6 years together, Sarah had learned to trust Max's instincts above her own. When he'd alerted to that seemingly innocent delivery truck last year, they'd uncovered 50 pounds of heroin. When he'd refused to let her enter that warehouse in February, the backup team had found it rigged with explosives. "Easy, Max." Sarah's hand found his head, feeling the coarse fur beneath her palm. The Easter Bunny soldier was handing out candy from a wicker basket, delighting children who squealed with joy. Parents snapped photos as their toddlers hugged the costumed figure. Everything looked perfectly normal, but Max knew better. The dog's entire body vibrated with contained energy. His nose twitched, nostrils flaring as he processed scents invisible to human senses. Sarah watched the soldier's movements more carefully now, noting how he kept the basket close to his body, how his eyes constantly scanned the crowd behind the costume's plastic mask. "Officer Collins?" A mother approached with her young daughter. "Could we get a picture with your beautiful dog?" Sarah smiled automatically, but her attention never left the Easter Bunny. "Of course." Max, pose. The Malinois sat perfectly, his training overriding his agitation, but his ears remained pricked forward. The little girl giggled as she petted his head, and Sarah snapped the photo with the mother's phone. As she handed it back, she caught sight of the soldier again. He was moving toward the main stage where children were gathering for the egg hunt announcement. His basket swayed with each step, and Sarah noticed something odd. It seemed heavier than a container of candy should be. The way he carried it, both hands gripping the handles, suggested significant weight. Max's growl intensified. "That's enough socializing," Sarah murmured to the family. "Have a wonderful Easter." She unclipped Max's leash, giving him the tactical freedom he might need. Her radio crackled with routine patrol updates, but she turned the volume down. Something was building here. She could feel it in the electric tension radiating from her partner. The Easter Bunny reached the stage area and set his basket down carefully, too carefully. Sarah's pulse quickened. That wasn't the casual placement of a candy container. That was someone handling something fragile, something dangerous. Max took 3 purposeful steps forward, his body language shifting into full alert mode. Sarah's hand instinctively moved to her service weapon, as every instinct screamed that this innocent Easter celebration was about to become something else entirely. The costumed soldier looked up, and for just a moment, Sarah caught his eyes through the mask's holes. They were cold, calculating, and completely at odds with the joyful holiday character he was supposed to represent. Max barked once, sharp and commanding. The game had begun. "Police, step away from the basket." Sarah's voice cut through the carnival atmosphere like a gunshot. The Easter Bunny froze, his costumed head turning toward her with mechanical precision. Around them, confused families began to murmur and step back. Max was already moving, his powerful legs carrying him forward in a controlled advance. The soldier's hand twitched toward the basket, but Sarah's weapon was drawn and trained on him before he could complete the motion. "Hands where I can see them, now!" The costumed figure raised his arms slowly, but Sarah caught the subtle shift in his stance, the coiled tension of someone preparing to run or fight. She'd seen it 100 times before in her career, but never at a children's Easter parade. "Max, guard." The command was barely a whisper, but her partner heard it clearly. The Malinois positioned himself between the suspect and the crowd of families, his intelligent eyes never leaving the threat. Sarah approached the basket with practiced caution, her weapon still aimed at the soldier. "Everyone back! Clear the area!" Parents grabbed their children, confused shouts filling the air as the festive atmosphere dissolved into panic. The wicker basket sat innocuously on the pavement, decorated with cheerful yellow ribbons. Through the gaps in the weaving, Sarah could see the colorful shapes of Easter eggs nestled inside. Everything looked perfectly normal, exactly what you'd expect to find in an Easter bunny's basket. But Max's continued alertness told a different story. "What's in the basket?" Sarah demanded, stepping closer while maintaining her tactical position. The soldier said nothing, his breathing audible through the costume's fabric. Sarah could smell his sweat despite the cool April air, the sharp scent of fear and adrenaline. She reached for the basket's lid with her free hand, Max's training allowing her to work one-handed while keeping her weapon ready. The moment her fingers touched the wicker, the soldier tensed. "Don't." His voice was muffled by the costume, but carried unmistakable menace. "You have no idea what you're dealing with." Sarah's heart hammered against her ribs, but her hands remained steady. In her peripheral vision, she saw Atlanta PD backup units arriving, their sirens adding to the chaos. Good. She'd need support for whatever was about to unfold. The basket's lid lifted easily, revealing a dozen brightly colored Easter eggs nestled in artificial grass. Pink, blue, yellow, green. They looked exactly like the plastic eggs children hunted for every spring. Sarah almost smiled at her own paranoia. Then she saw the wires. Thin copper strands snaked between the eggs, barely visible against the green plastic grass. Each egg had been carefully modified, small electronic components visible through hairline cracks in the plastic shells. The sweet smell of artificial grass couldn't quite mask the sharp chemical odor that made her nostrils burn. Sarah's blood turned to ice. Jesus Christ. "Now you understand." The soldier's voice carried grim satisfaction. 12 high-yield devices, Officer Collins. Yes, I know who you are. Each egg contains enough explosive to level a city block. Max's growl deepened, his predator's instincts recognizing the threat even if he couldn't comprehend its technical nature. Sarah's mind raced through her training. Bomb disposal protocols, evacuation procedures, threat assessment. But she'd never faced anything like this at a family event. Why? The question escaped before she could stop it. The soldier tilted his costumed head. Because sometimes the most innocent settings make the loudest statements. Because children's screams carry further than adults' complaints. Because Atlanta needed to learn that nowhere is safe. Sarah's radio crackled with urgent voices as backup units established a perimeter. The crowd had been pushed back several blocks, but she could still hear children crying in the distance. 12 bombs, hundreds of potential casualties. The weight of it threatened to crush her. But Max stepped closer, his solid presence reminding her that she wasn't alone. They'd faced impossible odds before and emerged victorious. This wouldn't be different. "Max, stay close." She kept her weapon trained on the soldier while speaking into her radio. "This is Officer Collins. I need the bomb squad and full hazmat protocols. We have multiple explosive devices at the parade site." The soldier laughed, a sound made more chilling by the cheerful Easter bunny costume. "Your bomb squad won't help you, officer. This is just the beginning." Sarah's world shifted as the true scope of the threat began to crystallize. This wasn't a lone wolf with a basket of bombs. This was something bigger, more organized, more dangerous than anything she and Max had ever encountered. The Easter celebration had become ground zero for a nightmare that was just beginning to unfold. The Atlanta Police Department's bomb squad worked with surgical precision around the Easter basket, their robot arms carefully extracting each modified egg while Sarah watched from behind the blast barrier. Max sat pressed against her leg, his body still vibrating with tension, even though the immediate threat had been contained. "Military grade C4, Sergeant Rodriguez announced, pulling off his protective helmet. Whoever built these knew exactly what they were doing. Professional level work, not some basement amateur. Sarah studied the soldier who'd been arrested, still in his ridiculous Easter bunny costume, now handcuffed in the back of a patrol car. He'd refused to give his name, but the arrogance in his posture suggested military training. The way he'd handled himself under pressure, the precision of his bomb construction, everything pointed to someone with serious tactical experience. "Max, search!" She released her partner to investigate the area where the basket had been placed. The Malinois immediately began working the scent trail, his nose pressed close to the pavement as he followed traces invisible to human senses. Detective Martinez approached with a tablet displaying preliminary forensics. "The explosives have military serial numbers, Sarah. These components were stolen from Fort Benning 3 months ago. Command reported it as a clerical error, but now we know better." Sarah watched Max work, noting how his search pattern was expanding beyond the immediate area. "What else did they take? Enough to level half of downtown Atlanta?" Martinez's voice was grim. "Detonators, timers, remote triggers. This guy's basket was just a sample of what's out there." Max suddenly changed direction, his entire body language shifting as he caught a new scent. He moved toward the storm drain at the corner, then sat and barked once, his signal for a significant find. Sarah felt her pulse quicken. "What is it, boy?" She knelt beside the drain cover, peering into the darkness below. The metallic smell of the storm system couldn't quite mask something else, the same chemical odor she detected from the basket. Martinez called for equipment, while Sarah worked to lift the heavy metal grate. Max whined softly, his anxiety communicating that whatever was down there was important. Very important. The drain revealed a waterproof bag containing maps of Atlanta, marked with red X's. Schools, churches, shopping centers, all locations that would be packed with families during Easter weekend. Sarah's stomach clenched as she counted the marks. 15 target sites, enough to turn the city into a war zone. "This is coordinated." She spread the maps on the hood of her patrol car, Max pressing close, as if he understood the gravity of what they discovered. Multiple teams, multiple targets, all hitting simultaneously. Her radio crackled with updates from other units. Similar suspicious activity reported at 3 different locations. Military-aged males in various costumes, all carrying baskets or bags, all disappearing when police approached. The pattern was becoming clear. "Sarah," Martinez pointed to a notation on one of the maps. "Look at this." In neat military handwriting, someone had written "Operation Easter Thunder" across the top of the largest map. Below it, a timeline showing coordinated strikes beginning at 2 p.m., exactly when the main Easter egg hunt was scheduled to begin at Centennial Olympic Park. That was in 4 hours. Max suddenly alerted again, his nose twitching as a new scent caught his attention. He moved toward an abandoned van parked 2 blocks away, his gait purposeful and urgent. Sarah followed, her hand instinctively moving to her weapon. The van's rear doors were slightly ajar, and the chemical smell was stronger here. Through the gap, Sarah could see military-style equipment bags and what looked like communication gear. Professional-grade surveillance equipment, night vision goggles, tactical vests, enough gear to outfit a small army. "Martinez, I need backup at the van. Now." But as she spoke, her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Officer Collins, you've seen enough. Back away now, or Atlanta's children pay the price." Sarah looked around, suddenly aware that she and Max were being watched. Somewhere in the surrounding buildings, hostile eyes were tracking their every move. The soldier in custody wasn't the end of this conspiracy. He was just the beginning. Max pressed closer, his solid presence a reminder that whatever came next, they'd face it together. But as Sarah stared at the threatening message on her phone, she realized they were no longer hunting the enemy. The enemy was hunting them. 4 hours until Operation Easter Thunder began. 4 hours to stop a coordinated attack that would turn Atlanta's most innocent holiday into its darkest nightmare. The real war was just beginning. Sarah's secure radio crackled with an update she'd requested only 5 minutes earlier. "All units, suspect van is empty, no evidence found." but she was staring directly at the military equipment bags through the van's rear doors, Max still alerting to the chemical signatures inside. Someone had warned them. Her blood ran cold as the implications hit her. The van hadn't been emptied. Her backup had been instructed to report it empty. Someone within the Atlanta PD was feeding information to the terrorists, someone with access to tactical communications and operational details. Martinez. She kept her voice level while her mind raced. Did you relay our van discovery through official channels? Of course. Standard protocol. Martinez stopped mid-sentence as understanding dawned on his face. Shit, you think we have a leak? Sarah's phone buzzed again. The same unknown number. We told you to back away, Officer Collins. Your colleagues are more cooperative than you are. Max whined softly, sensing her rising tension. Sarah scratched behind his ears while processing this new reality. Not only were they racing against a coordinated terrorist attack, but they couldn't trust their own department. Every move they made, every discovery was being reported to the enemy. We're on our own, she murmured to Max, who tilted his head with the intelligence that had made him such an exceptional partner. Her radio crackled with new orders. Officer Collins, report to headquarters immediately for debriefing. Case is being transferred to federal jurisdiction. Sarah almost laughed at the transparent attempt to remove her from the investigation. Someone desperately wanted her away from those maps, away from the evidence, away from whatever Operation Easter Thunder really entailed. Copy that, she lied smoothly. En route now. Instead, she led Max toward the van while appearing to head for her patrol car. If they had minutes before someone realized she wasn't following orders, she needed to document everything herself. Her phone's camera captured the equipment bags, the communication gear, the military precision of the setup. Max suddenly stiffened, his ears pricked toward the approaching footsteps. 3 officers rounded the corner, Sergeant Blake, Officer Torres, and Detective Hoffman, all carrying tactical gear, all moving with purpose that had nothing to do with standard police work. Officer Collins, Blake's voice carried false authority. You're needed elsewhere. We'll secure this scene. Sarah recognized the setup immediately. These weren't colleagues coming to help. They were cleanup crew coming to eliminate evidence, and possibly eliminate witnesses. Max, quiet. Her whispered command put her partner into stealth mode, ready to move silently and strike without warning if necessary. Of course, Sergeant. Sarah smiled while calculating distances and escape routes. Just finishing my preliminary report. But Blake was already moving toward the van, and Torres was positioning himself to block her path to the patrol car. Hoffman's hand rested casually on his weapon, the gesture meant to appear routine, but carrying unmistakable threat. Sarah's training kicked in as she realized how deep this conspiracy ran. 3 corrupted officers, minimum, with access to communications and evidence. They'd probably been feeding information to the terrorists for weeks, maybe months. Her phone's camera was still recording, capturing their faces, their positions, their obvious intent to sanitize the scene. If she could get this evidence to someone trustworthy, it might be enough to expose the internal network. Max. She spoke normally, but her partner heard the subtle command tone underneath. The Malinois shifted into ready position, muscles coiled for explosive action. Problem, Collins? Hoffman's hand moved closer to his weapon. No problem at all. Sarah stepped backward casually, maintaining the facade while creating tactical space. Just wondering why 3 officers need to secure an empty van. Blake's eyes hardened. The van's not empty anymore, officer. New intelligence suggests multiple devices inside. Area needs immediate evacuation. The lie was smooth, professional, and completely unconvincing. Sarah had been staring at the van's contents for the past 10 minutes. No one had added anything. They were improvising, trying to create justification for removing her from the scene. Understood. Max and I will establish a perimeter at... Max stays here, Torres interrupted. Department policy during bomb disposal. That was when Sarah knew they intended to kill them both. No legitimate police operation would separate a K-9 team during active threat response. They wanted Max contained so he couldn't track them or alert others to what happened next. Her hand found her weapon as the three officers spread into triangular formation around her. Professional, coordinated, deadly, but they'd underestimated both her and Max. Now, boy, the game had changed completely. Max exploded into motion like a furry missile, his 80 pounds of trained muscle hitting Officer Torres' center mass. The corrupt cop went down hard, his weapon skittering across the pavement as Sarah rolled behind a parked car, bullets sparking off metal where she'd been standing seconds before. This wasn't Sarah's first firefight, and it wouldn't be her last. The muscle memory kicked in immediately. Breathe, assess, respond. Just like that night 3 years ago, when she and Max had walked into what should have been a routine drug bust. She'd been a newer K9 officer then, still learning to trust Max's instincts completely. The warehouse had seemed empty, all intelligence suggesting the dealers had fled hours earlier. But Max had refused to enter, his body language screaming danger in ways Sarah was only beginning to understand. "What is it, boy?" she'd whispered that night, just as she had today with the Easter Bunny. The answer had come in muzzle flashes from the warehouse windows, 6 armed dealers who'd turned the building into a kill zone. Sarah had taken shrapnel in her shoulder, Max a graze across his ribs, but they'd survived because she'd learned to trust his warnings. Now, crouched behind the car as Blake and Hoffman tried to flank her position, that same trust was keeping them alive. Max had Torres pinned, his powerful jaws clamped around the officer's wrist while the man screamed curses that would make a sailor blush. "Max! Release! Cover!" Sarah's command sent her partner racing toward her position as she laid down suppressing fire. The Malinois moved with tactical precision, using parked cars and building corners for concealment, just as he'd been trained. Blake's voice carried over the gunfire. "Collins, you're interfering with a federal operation. Stand down." Federal operation. Right. Just like the federal operation that had tried to eliminate them during the Martinez cartel investigation last year. Sarah and Max had spent 2 days evading corrupt agents through the Georgia wilderness, living on creek water and energy bars while dodging professional killers. That experience had taught them both the value of improvisation. When you couldn't trust the system, you trusted your partner. When backup wasn't coming, you made your own luck. Sarah's radio crackled with desperate calls for her location. The legitimate cops were trying to find her, but the corrupted communications meant every transmission was being monitored. She switched to the emergency frequency she and Max had established during their wilderness ordeal, a simple series of whistles and hand signals that no surveillance could intercept. Max heard the low whistle and immediately moved to overwatch position, his intelligent eyes scanning for threats while Sarah planned their next move. They'd practiced this scenario dozens of times, how to evade hostile forces when official channels were compromised. The memory of their first successful undercover operation flooded back. Sarah disguised as a drug buyer, Max hidden in her fake boyfriend's car, both of them walking into a meeting with suppliers who'd already killed 2 informants. When the deal went sideways, Max had burst through the car window like an avenging angel, taking down 3 armed dealers while Sarah secured the evidence. That night had forged their partnership into something unbreakable. They'd learned to communicate through micro-expressions, to coordinate complex maneuvers with minimal signals, to trust each other's judgment absolutely, even when everything else went to hell. Now Blake was moving closer, his weapon trained on Sarah's last known position. But he was hunting a team that had survived drug lords, cartel assassins, and corrupt federal agents. He was hunting ghosts who'd learned to disappear when the system turned against them. Sarah's phone vibrated with a new message. "Your partner bleeds red, just like anyone else, Collins." The threat against Max ignited something primal in Sarah's chest. She'd taken bullets for this dog, and he'd taken worse for her. They'd pulled each other out of burning buildings, toxic waste sites, and more ambushes than she cared to remember. Blake wanted to play psychological warfare. He'd picked the wrong team. Sarah whistled once, the signal for hunt. Max's ears pricked forward as his training shifted from defensive to offensive mode. They'd practiced this transition countless times. The moment when hunted became hunter. The corrupt officers had firepower and numbers, but Sarah and Max had something more valuable: absolute trust forged in fire. Time to remind Atlanta's enemies why the K9 unit had the highest success rate in the department. Sarah's apartment window shattered at 3:17 a.m., 3 hours after she and Max had escaped the corrupted officers downtown. Glass fragments sparkled across her hardwood floor as she rolled out of bed, Max already alert and positioning himself between her and the threat. They'd made it home by moving through storm drains and abandoned buildings, avoiding main streets where surveillance cameras could track them. But somehow, the enemy had found her address. Someone with access to personnel files. Someone who knew exactly where Atlanta's K9 officers lived. Max, quiet. Her whispered command sent the Malinois into stealth mode as she grabbed her service weapon and spare ammunition. Another window exploded in the kitchen, followed by the distinctive pop of gas canisters hitting the floor. Tear gas, professional grade, the kind used by tactical teams. Sarah's mind raced through possibilities as she pulled on tactical gear and clipped Max's working harness into place. They wanted her alive. Dead cops generated too much attention, but they also wanted her helpless, blind, choking on chemical agents while they moved in for capture. She activated the emergency ventilation system she'd installed after the Martinez cartel had tried to smoke her out of a safe house last year. Military surplus fans pulled the gas towards sealed exits while filtered air flowed in from hidden vents. The modifications had cost her 3 months' salary, but paranoia was an occupational necessity in her line of work. Max's nose twitched at the chemical smell, but his breathing remained steady thanks to the specialized mask Sarah fitted over his muzzle. They'd practiced operating in contaminated environments dozens of times, preparing for exactly this scenario. Her phone buzzed with another threatening message. "Surrender now, Collins. We know you're inside. We know you can't escape." Sarah almost smiled at their overconfidence. They knew her address, but they didn't know about the tunnel system she'd discovered during a drug raid 2 years ago. Atlanta's underground was honeycombed with forgotten storm drains, abandoned subway tunnels, and Prohibition-era smuggling routes. She'd mapped every passage within a 2-mile radius of her home. Moving silently through her apartment, Sarah gathered essential equipment: ammunition, first aid supplies, the encrypted phone that connected directly to FBI headquarters. If she could reach federal agents who weren't compromised, she might still have a chance to stop Operation Easter Thunder. Max alerted to movement outside the back door, his body language indicating multiple hostiles approaching from different directions. They were being surrounded, the net closing slowly and professionally. But the attackers were thinking like conventional tactical teams, expecting their target to behave like a conventional victim. Sarah activated her apartment's security system, not the standard alarm that connected to police dispatch, but the military-grade deterrent system she'd installed after too many attempts on her life. Strobing lights flooded the exterior, while sonic disruptors unleashed ear-splitting frequencies designed to disorient attackers. In the chaos of flashing lights and overwhelming sound, Sarah and Max slipped through the hidden panel in her bedroom closet. The passage led to the building's original basement, then connected to the storm drain system that would carry them safely away from the assault team. Her radio crackled with intercepted communications. "Target has escaped primary containment, initiating neighborhood sweep." They weren't giving up. If anything, the failed capture would make them more desperate, more dangerous. Sarah's phone showed 17 missed calls from Detective Martinez, probably the only person in the department she could still trust. She couldn't return his calls. Every communication was being monitored, every contact potentially compromised. But Martinez deserved to know what he was walking into when he tried to help her. Moving through the tunnels with Max leading the way, Sarah composed a carefully coded text message using references only Martinez would understand. Their shared experiences investigating the Rodriguez smuggling ring had established a private vocabulary that surveillance couldn't easily crack. The fishing trip we planned is cancelled. The lake is contaminated. Meet at our favorite breakfast spot at dawn. Martinez would know she meant the abandoned warehouse where they'd broken the Rodriguez case. He'd understand that contaminated lake meant compromised communications, and he'd realize that dawn gave them exactly 4 hours before Operation Easter Thunder was scheduled to begin. Max suddenly stopped, his ears pricked forward as new sounds echoed through the tunnel system. Footsteps, multiple sets, moving with military precision through the underground passages. They'd anticipated her escape route, probably using building blueprints and city engineering records to track possible exits. Sarah's blood chilled as she realized the scope of their intelligence gathering. These weren't just corrupt cops or amateur terrorists. They had resources, planning capabilities, and insider knowledge that suggested something much larger than a local conspiracy. Her phone vibrated with a final message that made her stomach clench. "Run all you want, Collins. We have people everywhere. And tomorrow, Atlanta burns." Max pressed closer, his solid warmth a reminder that she wasn't alone in this nightmare. But as hostile voices echoed through the tunnels around them, Sarah realized they weren't just fighting for their lives anymore. They were Atlanta's last hope. Dawn broke gray and cold over the abandoned warehouse where Sarah met Detective Martinez, both of them arriving through different routes after evading surveillance teams throughout the night. Max immediately alerted to Martinez's approach, then relaxed when Sarah gave the all-clear signal, one of the few people her partner still trusted. "Jesus, Sarah." Martinez looked exhausted, his usually immaculate appearance disheveled from hours of dodging his own department. "They've got APBs out on you for assaulting fellow officers. Half the force thinks you've gone rogue." Sarah spread the terrorist maps across a dusty table, weighting down the corners with pieces of broken concrete. "Look at this before you decide whose side you're on." Martinez studied the marked locations, his face growing pale as the scope of Operation Easter Thunder became clear. 15 targets across Atlanta, each one packed with families during Easter weekend. Churches holding sunrise services, schools hosting egg hunts, shopping centers running holiday promotions. Holy shit! His finger traced the timeline notations. They're hitting everything simultaneously. Kids, parents, grandparents, anyone celebrating Easter becomes a casualty. Max circled the perimeter, his senses alert for approaching threats, while Sarah explained what she'd discovered about the internal conspiracy. 3 corrupted officers, minimum, probably more, all feeding intelligence to a military-trained terrorist cell with access to stolen explosives. Vincent Steele. Martinez pulled up files on his tablet, showing Sarah surveillance photos from Fort Benning. Former Special Forces, dishonorably discharged last year for extremist activities. Army intelligence flagged him as a domestic terrorism risk, but somehow he slipped through the cracks. Sarah studied Steele's photograph. Cold eyes, scarred hands, the lean build of someone who'd spent years perfecting violence as a profession. This was the man behind the Easter Bunny costume, the architect of Operation Easter Thunder. Look at his associates. Martinez swiped through additional photos. 6 other discharged veterans, all with grievances against the government, all with specialized skills in explosives and tactical operations. The pieces were falling into place with terrifying clarity. 7 highly trained soldiers turned terrorists, supplied with military-grade explosives and inside intelligence from corrupted police officers. They'd chosen Easter specifically for maximum psychological impact, turning a celebration of renewal and hope into a nightmare of death and destruction. Max suddenly stiffened, his ears pricked toward the warehouse entrance. Sarah drew her weapon as Martinez checked his radio, both of them moving into defensive positions behind concrete pillars. "This is Detective Martinez." He spoke carefully into his radio, requesting status update on Officer Collins' investigation. The response made Sarah's blood run cold. "Martinez, Report your current location immediately. You're needed for tactical briefing on terrorist apprehension. They'd been found. Someone was tracking Martinez's radio. Probably had been all night. Sarah gestured for him to turn off all communications while Max maintained overwatch on possible entry points. "How many people know about these maps?" Martinez whispered. "Just us. And whoever's trying to kill us." Sarah folded the terrorist plans into her tactical vest. "We can't trust official channels. Every communication is compromised." Her phone buzzed with yet another threatening message. "Last chance, Collins. Surrender the evidence and your dog lives. Continue interfering and watch Atlanta burn." But this time, Sarah noticed something crucial in the message's metadata. The sender's location was pinging from multiple cell towers simultaneously, a technique used by people trying to mask their position, but also one that revealed they were operating from a central command center somewhere in downtown Atlanta. "Martinez, look at this." She showed him the signal triangulation data. "They're broadcasting from the same general area as 3 of their target locations. They're not just planning to attack these sites, they're staging from them." The implications hit both officers simultaneously. The terrorists weren't just going to bomb Atlanta's Easter celebrations, they were going to turn the attack sites into fortified positions, probably planning to hold hostages while making demands. This wasn't just terrorism, it was preparation for urban warfare. Max's warning bark interrupted their analysis. Through the warehouse's grimy windows, Sarah could see tactical vehicles surrounding the building. Black SUVs, unmarked vans, the kind of professional mobile force that suggested federal involvement. But were they legitimate federal agents, or more corrupted law enforcement working for Steele's organization? Sarah's radio crackled with an unfamiliar voice. "Officer Collins, this is Special Agent Rebecca Torres, FBI Counterterrorism. We need to talk." The same last name as one of the corrupted officers who tried to kill her yesterday. Coincidence or family connection? Sarah's paranoia was now justified by experience. Trust no one. Verify everything. Assume everyone was compromised until proven otherwise. "Martinez, we're leaving now." Sarah headed for the warehouse's rear exit, Max automatically taking point position for their escape route. But as they moved through the building, Sarah realized they were trapped. The federal agents, real or fake, had surrounded every exit with professional precision. Whatever came next would determine whether Operation Easter Thunder succeeded in turning Atlanta into a battlefield. The final game was beginning. Special Agent Rebecca Torres entered the warehouse alone, her hands visible and empty, while Sarah kept her weapon trained on the FBI agent from behind concrete cover. Max remained motionless beside her, reading the tension in every line of Sarah's body. "Officer Collins, I'm going to show you something that will change your perspective on this entire operation." Torres moved slowly, deliberately, pulling a tablet from her tactical vest. Vincent Steele isn't just a disgruntled veteran. He's the center of something much larger. Sarah didn't lower her weapon. "Prove you're legitimate FBI, not another corrupted cop working for the terrorists." Torres activated the tablet, displaying classified military files that made Sarah's stomach clench. Vincent Steele's service record showed 15 years of exemplary performance in special forces, including 3 tours in Afghanistan and 2 classified operations in Syria. Decorated veteran, respected leader, trusted with the military's most sensitive missions. Until everything went wrong in Kandahar. "Operation Broken Arrow," Torres explained, her voice carrying the weight of classified knowledge. Steele's unit was tasked with securing a terrorist weapons cache. Intelligence was faulty. Instead of finding enemy combatants, they hit a school full of children. The tablet displayed aftermath photos that Sarah wished she could unsee. Bodies of Afghan children scattered among destroyed desks and broken toys. The kind of carnage that broke soldiers' minds and turned heroes into monsters. Steele filed 17 separate reports claiming the intelligence was deliberately falsified, Torres continued. He accused his commanding officers of knowingly sending his team to massacre innocents. When the military refused to investigate, he began making public accusations. Sarah lowered her weapon slightly, beginning to understand the twisted psychology driving Operation Easter Thunder. They destroyed his career to protect the cover-up. Dishonorably discharged, stripped of benefits, blacklisted from military contractor work. But Steele didn't disappear quietly. He spent 2 years recruiting other damaged veterans, building a network of soldiers who felt betrayed by the system they'd served. Max suddenly alerted, his nose twitching as new scents reached him through the warehouse's ventilation system. Chemical traces that Sarah recognized from the Easter basket, C4 explosive residue, the signature of Steele's operation. "He's here," Sarah whispered, scanning the warehouse's upper levels where shadows offered concealment for a trained sniper. Torres nodded grimly. "Steele's been tracking you since yesterday, Officer Collins. He considers you a direct threat to his mission, but also potentially valuable as a hostage. A K-9 officer tortured and killed on live television would send exactly the message he wants to broadcast." The tablet displayed intercepted communications, showing the full scope of Steele's plan. Operation Easter Thunder wasn't just about killing civilians. It was about proving that nowhere in America was safe, that the government couldn't protect its own citizens, that the same military that created monsters like Steele could be turned against the homeland. 7 targets hit simultaneously at exactly 2 p.m., Torres explained. Churches, schools, shopping centers, all places where families gather to celebrate hope and renewal. Steele wants to turn Easter into a national day of mourning. Sarah studied the operational timeline, noting the psychological precision of Steele's planning. Easter Sunday, when Americans felt most secure in their traditions and faith. Family gatherings where multiple generations would be present. Maximum emotional impact designed to traumatize an entire nation. But there's something else. Torres's voice dropped to a whisper. Steele's final target isn't on your maps. He's planning to attack the CNN Center during their live Easter broadcast, turning his manifesto into appointment television for millions of viewers. Max's warning growl interrupted the briefing. Through the warehouse's skylight, Sarah caught a glimpse of movement, the distinctive silhouette of a tactical sniper finding his position. Steele had found them, and he wasn't planning to take prisoners. "Martinez, cover!" Sarah shouted as the first shot shattered concrete inches from her head. But Martinez was already down, blood spreading from a chest wound as Torres dragged him behind cover. Professional marksmanship, center mass targeting, the kind of precision shooting that suggested extensive training and expensive equipment. Sarah's radio crackled with Steele's voice, transmitted on the emergency frequency. "Officer Collins, you've caused considerable inconvenience to my operation. Time to discuss terms for your surrender." The voice was calm, controlled, carrying the authority of someone accustomed to command. But underneath the professional tone, Sarah heard something else. The barely contained rage of a man who'd watched children die and been punished for caring about it. "Terms?" Sarah keyed her radio while Max positioned himself for a flanking maneuver. "How about you surrender before I put you down like the rabid dog you've become?" Steele's laughter echoed through the warehouse, cold and bitter. "You still don't understand, do you? I'm already dead, Officer Collins. Died in that schoolhouse in Kandahar with those children. Everything since then has just been waiting for the right moment to take as many people with me as possible." The final piece of the puzzle fell into place as Sarah realized they weren't just facing a terrorist. They were facing a broken soldier who decided the entire world deserved to share his pain. The warehouse exploded into chaos as Steele's sniper fire drove Sarah and the FBI team into a deadly game of cat and mouse through Atlanta's industrial district. Agent Torres had gotten Martinez to safety, but Sarah and Max were now alone, hunted by a professionally trained killer through terrain that offered 1,000 hiding spots for an experienced predator. "Max, track!" Sarah's whispered command sent her partner into hunting mode as they moved through the labyrinth of abandoned buildings and rusted machinery. The Malinois' nose worked constantly, sorting through the urban scents for traces of their quarry, while Sarah covered their six with tactical precision. Steele's voice echoed from hidden speakers throughout the district. "You're running out of time, Officer Collins. In 3 hours, Operation Easter Thunder begins, whether you're alive to see it or not. But I'd prefer you watched Atlanta burn before I put you down." The psychological warfare was classic Special Forces tactics. Keep the enemy stressed, disoriented, always wondering where the next attack would come from. But Sarah had learned from the best trainers in law enforcement, and she'd survived too many ambushes to be rattled by mind games. Max suddenly froze, his entire body going rigid as he caught a specific scent trail. His nose pointed toward a maintenance ladder leading to the elevated walkways that connected the old factory buildings. Steele was moving above them, using the high ground to control the engagement while staying mobile. Sarah's radio crackled with intercepted communications. "Alpha team in position at target 7. Bravo team reports delay at target 3. Police presence higher than expected." The other members of Steele's terrorist cell were already moving into position at their assigned targets. Churches where Easter sunrise services were beginning, schools where families were gathering for egg hunts, shopping centers preparing for holiday crowds. In less than 3 hours, those innocent gatherings would become killing fields. "Max, climb." Sarah started up the maintenance ladder, trusting her partner to follow using the specialized climbing harness they'd practiced with during high-altitude rescue training. The Malinois moved with surprising grace for his size, his powerful legs finding purchase on the metal rungs. The elevated walkways offered a commanding view of the entire industrial district, but also exposed them to sniper fire from multiple angles. Sarah moved in short bursts, using support pillars and machinery for cover, while Max scouted ahead with his superior senses. A muzzle flash from the water tower revealed Steele's position, followed immediately by the crack of high-velocity rounds tearing through the air where Sarah had been standing moments before. Professional marksmanship with military-grade equipment, he was using a Barrett M82, the kind of rifle that could punch through engine blocks. "Impressive reflexes," Steele's voice carried clearly across the distance. "Your file said you were good, but I'm beginning to think it underestimated you." Sarah keyed her radio while moving to a new position. "Vincent Steele, this is Officer Sarah Collins, Atlanta PD. You're wanted for terrorism, murder, and conspiracy. Surrender now, and I guarantee you'll live to tell your story in court." "My story?" Steele's laughter was bitter. "My story is that I served my country faithfully for 15 years, then got thrown away like garbage when I refused to stay quiet about war crimes. You want to hear my story, officer? Watch the news at 2 p.m. Max alerted to movement below them, tactical teams moving through the factory complex with coordinated precision. But Sarah couldn't tell if they were FBI backup or more of Steele's corrupted allies. In this nightmare of shifting loyalties, everyone was potentially hostile until proven otherwise. Her phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. "GPS coordinates attached. Your partner Martinez is being held at this location. Come alone or he dies slowly." Sarah stared at the coordinates, recognizing the address of St. Matthew's Episcopal Church, one of the targets marked on Steele's maps. The bastard had turned Martinez into bait, forcing her to choose between pursuing him and potentially saving her colleague's life. "Max, what do you think?" She scratched behind her partner's ears while studying the tactical situation. The Malinois looked up at her with intelligent eyes, as if understanding the impossible choice she faced. Pursue Steele and potentially stop the terrorist mastermind, but abandon Martinez to torture and death, or rescue Martinez and lose their only chance to prevent Operation Easter Thunder from turning Atlanta into a war zone. The decision was made when Max suddenly exploded into motion, his powerful legs carrying him across the walkway toward the water tower where Steele had taken position. The dog had made the choice for both of them. They were going to end this here and now, whatever the cost. Sarah followed her partner into what would either be their greatest victory or their final battle, knowing that time was running out for everyone they'd sworn to protect. Sarah rappelled down the water tower's exterior ladder as Steele's position above erupted in gunfire, Max having somehow breached the sniper's nest through a maintenance hatch the terrorist hadn't secured. The sounds of combat, snarls, curses and braking equipment told her that her partner was giving Steele the fight of his life. But time was running out. Her tactical watch showed 11:47 a.m., less than 2.5 hours before Operation Easter Thunder transformed Atlanta into a nightmare. Even if they captured Steele, his terrorist cells were already in position and prepared to execute their missions independently. Sarah's radio crackled with Agent Torres's voice. "Collins, Martinez is alive but critical. We've got him at Atlanta General, but he's asking for you specifically. Says he has information about stopping the remaining attacks." The water tower shuddered as something heavy, probably steel, crashed into the metal structure above. Max's training bark echoed down the shaft, the signal that meant target secured in their tactical vocabulary. Her partner had done the impossible and taken down a Special Forces veteran in single combat. Sarah climbed rapidly, finding Steele unconscious and zip-tied with Max standing guard over the terrorist leader. Blood matted the dog's fur, but his eyes were alert and his breathing steady. The Malinois had taken some damage, but nothing that would slow him down. Good boy. Best partner ever. Sarah checked Steele's pulse while scratching behind Max's ears. The terrorist was alive, but wouldn't be directing any more operations. Unfortunately, his network was designed to function without central command. Cutting off the head wouldn't stop the Hydra. Steele's tactical gear yielded a treasure trove of intelligence, encrypted communications equipment, detailed floor plans of all target locations, and a smartphone containing real-time updates from his terrorist cells. Sarah's heart sank as she read the status reports. Alpha Team, in position at Northside Baptist, security minimal, proceeding as planned. Bravo Team, St. Matthew's secured, target package armed and ready. Charlie Team, Lenox Square crawling with families, maximum impact confirmed. 7 teams, 7 targets, hundreds of potential casualties, and Sarah was just one K9 officer with a wounded dog racing against a clock that was ticking toward mass murder. Her phone rang. Agent Torres again. "Collins, where are you? Martinez is fading fast, but he keeps saying something about fishing spots and contaminated lakes. Does that mean anything to you?" Sarah's blood quickened as she recognized the coded language from their earlier message. Martinez had discovered something crucial about the terrorist network, something important enough to risk his life communicating, even while critically wounded. "I'm on my way." Sarah secured Steele with additional restraints and called for FBI backup to secure the terrorist leader. "Max, we're going to see Martinez. He's got intel that might save this city." The race to Atlanta General took 12 minutes through heavy traffic, Max riding shotgun with his head out the window despite his injuries. The Malinois seemed to understand that their mission wasn't over. If anything, the most critical phase was just beginning. Martinez looked pale and weak in his hospital bed, but his eyes sharpened when Sarah and Max entered the room. Tubes and monitors surrounded him, evidence of how close Steele's bullet had come to ending his life. "Sarah," his voice was barely a whisper, "the fishing spots. I mapped them all. Every location where we caught Rodriguez smugglers, they correspond to Steele's target sites." Sarah pulled out her tactical tablet, overlaying Martinez's smuggling investigation maps with the terrorist target locations. The correlation was perfect. Every single attack site was also a former Rodriguez cartel operation point. "They're using the same infrastructure," Martinez continued weakly. "Same escape routes, same supply caches, same corrupt contacts. Steele didn't just recruit discharged veterans, he absorbed an entire criminal network." And the implications hit Sarah like a physical blow. This wasn't just terrorism, it was organized crime elevated to warfare. The Rodriguez cartel's connections to corrupt officials, their weapons supply chains, their money laundering operations, all of it had been repurposed to support Operation Easter Thunder. Max suddenly alerted, his ears pricked toward the hospital window. Sarah followed his gaze and saw black SUVs surrounding the building, tactical teams moving with military precision. But these weren't FBI vehicles. The markings were wrong, the equipment too advanced for civilian law enforcement. "Martinez, we need to go. Now." Sarah helped her wounded colleague out of bed, while Max maintained overwatch on the approaching threats. "Sarah," Martinez grabbed her arm with surprising strength. "The Rodriguez network. It goes all the way to City Hall. The mayor's office has been compromised for months. That's how Steele knew your home address, your patrol routes, everything." Sarah's world tilted as the final piece of the conspiracy became clear. This wasn't just corrupted cops or federal agents. This was systemic infiltration reaching the highest levels of Atlanta's government. Operation Easter Thunder had been planned with inside knowledge from multiple agencies, multiple departments, multiple levels of authority. Max's warning bark interrupted her shock. The tactical teams were entering the hospital, moving floor by floor with professional efficiency. Time was up. With Martinez barely able to walk and Max injured from his fight with Steele, Sarah faced the most impossible odds of her career. 7 terrorist teams preparing to massacre civilians, a corrupted government unable to stop them, and unknown enemies closing in from all directions. But she still had one advantage they couldn't account for: the unbreakable bond between a cop and her dog, forged in battles they'd never expected to survive. Sarah's patrol car screamed through Atlanta's streets at 1:47 p.m., 13 minutes before Operation Easter Thunder was scheduled to begin. Martinez sat in the passenger seat, pale but determined, while Max rode in the back with his tactical vest loaded with emergency medical supplies and explosive detection equipment. They'd escaped the hospital through maintenance tunnels, but there was no time to celebrate. 7 locations across the city were about to become killing fields, and Sarah had made the hardest decision of her career. They couldn't save everyone, so they'd save who they could. "Northside Baptist first," Sarah announced, taking a corner at dangerous speed. "Largest congregation, most children, biggest potential casualty count." Martinez worked his radio, trying to reach honest cops who could evacuate the other targets, but every transmission was met with static or obvious delaying tactics. The corruption ran too deep. They were truly on their own. Max alerted as they approached the church, his nose detecting the chemical signature of military explosives from 3 blocks away. Sarah's heart sank. If Max could smell the bombs from this distance, Steele's team had brought enough C4 to level the entire building. The church parking lot was packed with cars as families arrived for the special Easter service. Children in their Sunday best ran between vehicles, while parents carried covered dishes for the post-service celebration. Normal people living normal lives, unaware that professional killers were preparing to murder them all. "There," Martinez pointed to a panel van parked near the church's main entrance. "Same type as the surveillance vehicle from yesterday." Sarah parked tactically, positioning their car to block the van's escape route while giving Max multiple approach vectors. Through the church's stained glass windows, she could see the packed congregation singing hymns, their voices carrying hope and joy into the afternoon air. Max moved like liquid death through the parking lot, his training allowing him to approach the van undetected while Sarah provided overwatch. The terrorist inside never saw the 80 pounds of fury that hit his driver's side window like a cannonball. Glass exploded as Max's powerful jaws clamped down on the bomber's weapon arm, dragging him halfway out of the vehicle while Sarah moved to secure the explosives. The van's cargo area contained enough C4 to crater a city block, all of it wired to cell phone detonators and timer devices. "Martinez, get those people out of the church!" Sarah shouted while wrestling with the bomber's partner, who'd emerged from the van's passenger side with military-grade weaponry. The firefight erupted in the church parking lot as families scattered in terror, parents shielding children, while Sarah and the terrorist exchanged gunfire between parked cars. Max maintained his grip on the first bomber, his training preventing the man from reaching the detonation controls. Sarah's radio exploded with reports from across the city. Shots fired at Lenox Square, explosion reported at St. Matthew's, multiple casualties at Washington High School. The other terrorist cells had begun their attacks. While Sarah fought to save one location, 6 others were becoming scenes of horror and death. The weight of those failing missions threatened to crush her spirit, but Max's fierce determination kept her focused on the battle at hand. Martinez appeared at the church entrance, his wounded body moving with desperate purpose as he shouted evacuation orders to the confused congregation. Families began streaming out of the building, their Easter celebration transformed into a nightmare of sirens and gunfire. The second bomber made a desperate lunge for the detonation controls, but Sarah's training kicked in with lethal precision. 3 shots center mass dropped him before his fingers could reach the trigger switch, while Max's continued assault on his partner prevented any coordinated response. "Bomb secured!" Sarah called out while carefully disconnecting the detonation devices. "Martinez, how many people were inside?" 237, he gasped, leaning against a car for support. "All accounted for. All alive." Sarah felt tears of relief streaming down her face as the congregation gathered in the street, their voices rising in spontaneous prayer for their deliverance. 237 people who would go home to their families tonight, who would celebrate Easter dinner and remember this day as miraculous rather than tragic. But her radio continued crackling with reports of death and destruction from the other target sites. Steele's remaining teams had successfully executed their missions, turning Atlanta's Easter celebration into a day of mourning that would echo through history. Max limped over to Sarah, his fur matted with blood, but his eyes bright with the satisfaction of a job well done. They'd saved who they could, fought with everything they had, and prevented at least one massacre from succeeding. As FBI tactical teams finally arrived to secure the scene, Sarah realized their war against Vincent Steele's terrorist network was far from over. But for now, in this church parking lot surrounded by grateful families, she allowed herself one moment of victory. Max pressed against her leg, his solid warmth reminding her that some battles were worth fighting regardless of the odds. 6 months later, Sarah stood in the federal courthouse as the judge read Vincent Steele's sentence: life imprisonment without possibility of parole for terrorism, conspiracy, and the murders of 43 innocent civilians across Atlanta. The courtroom was packed with survivors and families of victims, their presence a testament to the city's resilience in the face of unthinkable horror. Max sat beside her in the gallery, his service ribbon gleaming on his tactical harness. The Malinois had healed completely from his injuries and returned to full duty, but Sarah noticed he stayed closer to her now, their bond deepened by the trials they'd survived together. The defendant will also face charges in military court for his role in the Rodriguez cartel conspiracy, Judge Harrison continued. Evidence presented during this trial has exposed corruption reaching the highest levels of city government, leading to 12 additional arrests and the complete restructuring of Atlanta's security apparatus. Sarah watched Steele's face as the sentence was pronounced. The broken soldier showed no emotion, his eyes empty of everything except the cold satisfaction of someone who'd accomplished exactly what he'd set out to do. Operation Easter Thunder had failed to achieve its maximum casualties, but it had succeeded in exposing the systemic rot that allowed such conspiracies to flourish. Detective Martinez, fully recovered from his injuries, leaned over to whisper, 3 more Rodriguez network cells were rolled up last week. Your testimony about the cartel connections led to the biggest organized crime bust in Georgia history. The trials had been exhausting but necessary. Sarah had testified for days about the terrorist conspiracy, the corrupted law enforcement officers, and the criminal network that had made Operation Easter Thunder possible. Every detail mattered, every connection needed documentation to ensure that justice was served completely. Agent Torres approached as the court session ended. Officer Collins, the Bureau wants to offer you a position with our counterterrorism division. Your work on this case has been exceptional, and we could use someone with your skills and Max's abilities." Sarah scratched behind Max's ears while considering the offer. Federal work would mean bigger cases, more resources, the chance to prevent attacks before they reached the planning stage. But it would also mean leaving Atlanta, leaving the community they'd sworn to protect. "Thanks, but we're staying put," Sarah replied. "Atlanta needs good cops, and Max likes his current territory." The Malinois wagged his tail, as if agreeing with her decision, his intelligent eyes scanning the courthouse crowd with the alertness that had saved so many lives. They were a team, partners in every sense, and their work was far from finished. Outside the courthouse, families from Northside Baptist Church waited to thank Sarah and Max personally. Children who'd been evacuated from the building drew pictures of the brave police dog who'd saved their Easter celebration, while parents shook Sarah's hand with tears in their eyes. "You gave us our lives back," whispered Mrs. Patterson, whose 3-year-old daughter had been in the church nursery during the attack. "Emma still talks about the nice doggy who kept her safe." Sarah knelt down as little Emma approached Max with a homemade cookie shaped like a bone. The Malinois accepted the treat with gentle precision, his tail wagging as the child giggled and hugged his neck. These moments made every danger worth facing, every sacrifice meaningful. The mayor's office had been cleaned out completely, with honest administrators replacing the corrupted officials who'd enabled Steele's conspiracy. New protocols ensured that terrorist threats would be met with coordinated response from agencies that could trust each other implicitly. As Sarah and Max walked back to their patrol car, she reflected on how much had changed since that Easter morning when Max first alerted to the suspicious soldier in the bunny costume. The city was safer, the corrupt network had been dismantled, and justice had been served to everyone who'd participated in the conspiracy. But most importantly, the bond between Sarah and Max had been tested in the crucible of urban warfare and emerged stronger than ever. They'd saved lives, stopped terrorists, and proved that sometimes the most ordinary partnerships could accomplish extraordinary things. Max jumped into the patrol car's passenger seat, his eyes bright with anticipation for whatever challenge would come next. Sarah started the engine and pulled out into Atlanta traffic, knowing that somewhere in the city, someone needed their help. They were ready for whatever came next, partners until the end, protectors of a city that had learned to trust in heroes who walked on 2 legs and 4 paws. The radio crackled with a new call. "All units, suspicious package reported at Hartsfield-Jackson Airport." Sarah looked at Max, who was already alert and ready. "You up for another adventure, boy?" His bark was answer enough. The work continued.